Imagine this, you're 17. You're walking home in Drogheda, a small Irish town that looks harmless on the outside. By the next morning, parts of your body are turning up in Dublin. Boom. This is not Netflix. This is not a gangster movie. This is Ireland 2020. And the victim was Keane Mulready-Woods, a teenager who got sucked into a feud so brutal it left the entire country stunned. First up, Keane Mulready-Woods, 17 years old, from Drogheda, County Louth, just a kid. But this kid, he got caught up in a storm way bigger than him. Then you've got Robbie Lawlor. If Irish crime had a most wanted poster, his face would be on it. Dublin born, feared by rivals, and basically the boogeyman of the Drogheda feud. Enter Paul Crosby, local lad, not the top dog, more like the guy who carries the shopping bags for the gang. Later he gets nailed for helping out in Keane's murder. Next is Gerard Cruz. Think of him as the logistics guy. False plates, moving body parts, handling errands no one sane would ever put on their to-do list. And then there's Gerard McKenna, the cleaner, literally. He scrubbed blood off walls, pulled up floors, tried to erase what happened. Spoiler, he failed. And hanging over all of them, two Drogheda gangs locked in a drug war. Let's call them Faction A versus Faction B. Locals knew who was who, the rest of Ireland just saw chaos. Picture Drogheda, a quiet little town in northeast Ireland, the kind of place people imagine pints in the pub, Sunday matches, kids riding bikes down the street. You don't picture it as the set of an action movie. But under that surface, things were already boiling. Gangs were fighting over drug turf. Houses were getting burned, cars blown up, shots fired in the middle of the night. Drogheda wasn't a peaceful postcard anymore, it was a war zone with a pharmacy front. And this feud, it had been simmering for years. By 2018, the tension snapped. Twist #1, that summer, a major player named Owen Maguire was shot 6 times. 6 times. He survived, but he was left paralyzed. And if you know Gangland, Ireland, you know what that means. It wasn't just a shooting, it was a declaration. From that moment, the violence escalated. Everyone picked a side, and floating in that orbit, a name that kept coming back, Robbie Lawlor. Now let's talk about Keane himself, 17 years old, too young to be a player in any of this. But in Drogheda, if you hang around the wrong lads, you don't stay a bystander for long. Reports say Keane had ties to one side of the feud, the Maguire crew. He wasn't some kingpin, not some Scarface figure. He was a teenager trying to act big in a world where acting big can get you killed. Keane had a reputation for being wild. Guards knew his name. There were intimidation charges on his record. He was already in the gang's orbit, whether he liked it or not. And then comes the last night of his life. Sunday, January 12, 2020. Keane was last seen on St. Dominic's Bridge in Drogheda. Just a teenager out on the streets, probably thinking he was untouchable. But that night, he vanished. Twist #2. By the very next day, Monday morning, human remains turned up in Coolock, Dublin. A sports bag dumped on the street. Inside, limbs. DNA confirmed it was Keane. Boom! Suddenly, this small town feud wasn't just news in Drogheda, it was national headlines. So Monday morning, Dublin cops sorry, guards find a sports bag with human remains. That's already nightmare fuel. But trust me, the story doesn't stop there. Within hours, more parts show up. A head, hands, stashed in the boot of a burnt-out Volvo in Trinity Terrace, Ballybough, Dublin. Somebody actually torched the car, as if fire could cover up a murder this big. And the kicker? That Volvo was running on cloned plates. Yeah, the killers didn't just plan a hit, they planned a whole delivery service. But here's the part that really stunned everyone: Keane's torso wasn't there. Gone, vanished, like the most macabre missing piece puzzle in Irish crime history. Twist #3. It wasn't until March 11th, almost 2 months later, that the torso was finally discovered, dumped in a ravine in Rathmullen Park, Drogheda. At that point, people weren't just horrified, they were sickened. Because this wasn't a murder that got messy. This was surgical. This was deliberate. It wasn't just disposal, it was a message. Now, if you felt the killing was shocking, wait till you hear about the cleanup. Enter Gerard McKenna. This guy wasn't a gangster mastermind, he was the janitor of doom. His job? Scrub blood off the walls, rip up floors, torch furniture. Imagine trying to make a murder house look like an IKEA showroom. Spoiler, it didn't work. When guards eventually searched, they found blood on ceilings, walls, even a couch that had been soaked through. McKenna had dragged that couch out and literally set it on fire. Yeah, real subtle. He ended up getting jail time about 4 to 5 years. Honestly, that's a short stretch for trying to mop up the crime of the decade. Then you've got Paul Crosby and Gerard Cruz. These two weren't holding guns. They were the errand boys. Crosby? He kept in contact with Robbie Lawlor, lured Keane into danger, and drove him around. Cruz? He bought fake number plates, shuffled the body parts to Dublin like some deranged delivery guy for a horror movie. And when it all came crashing down, both of them admitted to facilitating the killing. Crosby got slapped with 10 years. Cruz less, but still went down. Twist #4, and the man many believed was the real puppet master Robbie Lawlor didn't even live long enough to see a trial. In April 2020, he was gunned down in Belfast. Just like that, the so-called kingpin was gone. You'd think after Keane's murder and Robbie Lawlor's own assassination, the feud would die down. Nope. The ripple effects are still being felt years later. Fast forward to May 2024. A man named Stephen Carberry, 46 years old, gets charged. His role? Helping dispose of body parts and messing with the investigation. Basically, he's accused of making sure evidence stayed hidden. Then in August 2024, another name drops Glenn Bride, 30 years old. He's charged for being part of the cleanup crew too. Burning the Volvo, moving remains, all the behind-the-scenes stuff that makes this case sound less like a crime and more like a grim production line. Both cases are set to go through the Special Criminal Court, Ireland's non-jury setup for Gangland cases, because honestly, who'd want to sit on a jury for this? And here's the chilling part: guards believe as many as 11 people were involved in Keane's murder. Not just men, women too. 11 lives tangled up in one teenager's death. Twist #5. Even now, 5 years later, evidence is still trickling out. More charges, more names, and the full truth, it may never all come out. So here's what sticks. A 17-year-old kid became a pawn in a drug war he could never win. He was pulled in, ripped apart, and used as a message. The so-called mastermind Robbie Lawlor shot dead himself a few months later. Other players in jail awaiting trial or still out there in the shadows. And the town of Drogheda, it's left with scars that don't fade. Here's the irony: the gangs wanted to terrify each other, to say, we're in charge. But instead, they terrified an entire nation. Parents, families, whole communities who suddenly realized this could happen to any kid who gets pulled into that orbit. And the haunting part? Even with all the arrests, all the trials, all the headlines, Keane's story is unfinished. Pieces of the truth are still missing, just like pieces of his body were missing for months. That's the legacy. Not the gang bragging rights, not the message. A silent teenager who became louder in death than he ever was in life.